Their only source of income was destroyed. That's why the unexpected transformation happened. What if I told you that what you think is saving you might be exactly what's keeping you trapped? The story you're about to hear will turn your head inside out and show you a truth that most people take a lifetime to understand. Tell me here in the comments, what city are you watching from? Write it down below because I love knowing where each incredible person who's here with me today comes from. And if you're not subscribed to the channel yet, subscribe now and hit the bell so you don't miss any story that will transform your life. This story happened a long time ago in a village lost in the mountains where lived a very poor man named John. John had an extremely difficult life. He lived in a simple little house, almost falling apart, with his wife and 2 children. The roof leaked when it rained. The walls had holes that let the cold wind in during the night, and the floor was dirt. But John had something he considered his greatest treasure, a skinny little cow with faded fur that gave a few liters of milk every day. That little cow was everything to John, literally everything. The milk she produced was what fed his family. Part of the milk they drank pure, part John's wife transformed into cheese to sell at the fair, and with the little money they earned, they bought the basics to survive. A little flour, beans, sometimes a piece of dried meat. There were no leftovers, no luxuries, no slack. It was just enough not to die of hunger. John spent his days taking care of that cow as if she were made of gold. He woke up before sunrise to milk her, took her to graze on the few tufts of grass that grew among the stones of the mountainous region, talked to her as if she were a person, and at night locked her in the small corral next to the house. The whole family's routine revolved around that little cow. John's children grew up seeing that animal as the thin line between survival and complete misery. Peter, the eldest son, had dreams. He wanted to study, wanted to leave that God-forsaken place, wanted to know the big city, have a profession, build something different. But how? There was no money for that. There was barely money to eat. So Peter did small manual labor jobs for the farmers in the region, carrying bags, fixing fences, digging wells. He came home every day with his body aching and his heart heavy, knowing that would be his life forever. Anna, the youngest daughter, was a smart and lively girl. She loved to read fast, but the only books she had access to were some old and torn ones that the village church priest lent out. She dreamed of being a teacher, of teaching other children, of making a difference in the world. But her dreams seemed as distant as the stars in the sky. She spent her days helping her mother with household chores, making cheese, washing clothes in the river, and every night looked through the little window of the house at the surrounding mountains and wondered if there was anything more beyond those rocks and that poverty. Maria, John's wife, was a strong but tired woman. The weight of years of struggle had marked her face with deep wrinkles. Her hands were rough from so much work, her back ached from carrying buckets of water from the well, and her heart ached even more from seeing her children without a future. But she never complained. Every day she was grateful they had that little cow, that they had milk to drink, that they had a roof over their heads, even if it leaked. John looked at his family every night during the simple dinner, made of hard bread soaked in the cow's milk, and felt a tightness in his chest. He wanted to give them more. He wanted to see his children studying, his wife resting, his house renovated. But what could he do? He had no land to plant, no money to invest in anything, no education to get a better job. All he had was that little cow, and so he clung to her with all his strength. The years went by and nothing changed. Peter continued doing odd jobs, Anna continued daydreaming, Maria continued aging before her time, and John continued milking his cow every single day. It was as if their life was frozen in time, trapped in an endless cycle of survival that never improved but also never worsened. That little cow was, at the same time, their salvation and their prison. But John couldn't see that. For him, losing that cow would be the end. It would be the death of the family. So he conformed, settled, and continued his routine without questioning if there could be another way. One day, something unexpected happened. A rich man from the big city was traveling through the mountainous region, getting to know the villages, observing how people lived. This man was known for his wisdom. People said he had a special way of seeing life, of understanding people's problems, and showing solutions that no one else could see. He wasn't a priest, wasn't a politician, wasn't a teacher. He was just a man who had lived a lot, learned a lot, and now dedicated part of his time helping people who were trapped in their own limitations. When this man arrived at the village where John lived, people gathered in the central square to hear him speak. John was there too, standing at the back of the small crowd, with his worn hat in his hands and his tired eyes observing that well-dressed stranger. The rich man spoke about change, about opportunities, about how sometimes we need to abandon what is comfortable to achieve something better. His words were beautiful, inspiring, but John listened to everything with skepticism. Easy for him to talk, John thought. He has money, has education, has everything. He doesn't know what it's like to wake up every day not knowing if you'll have something to eat. After the meeting ended, the rich man began to walk through the village, observing the houses, talking to people. When he came near John's house, he stopped. He looked at that miserable construction, at the improvised corral, at the skinny little cow grazing nearby. John was sitting on an old log in front of the house, mending a torn shirt. The rich man approached and greeted John kindly. "Good afternoon," said the man with a sincere smile. "May I sit here with you for a moment?" John, surprised by the attention from that important man, nodded, yes. The man sat beside him on that log and remained silent for a few moments, just observing the landscape of the surrounding mountains, the blue sky, the little cow grazing peacefully. "You seem like a hard-working man," said the rich man, breaking the silence. "And I do what I can," John responded, without taking his eyes off the shirt he was mending. "Tell me, what do you do for a living?" John then told his story. He spoke about the little cow, about the milk, about how that was everything that sustained his family. He spoke about his children without a future, about his tired wife, about his dreams that died long ago. As he spoke, his voice became choked, and he realized he was saying things he had never said out loud to anyone. That stranger had something that made people open up. The rich man listened to everything in silence, nodding from time to time, with a serious but compassionate expression on his face. When John finished speaking, the man was thoughtful for a long moment. Then, he looked directly into John's eyes and said something that sounded completely absurd. "You need to push your cow off the cliff." John blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" "That cow there," said the man, pointing to the little cow grazing peacefully. "You need to take her to the cliff behind your house and push her down." John stood up abruptly, indignant. "Are you crazy? That cow is all I have. Without her, my family will starve to death." "What kind of advice is that? You come here with your fine clothes and your money and tell me to destroy the only thing that keeps me alive." The rich man remained calm, sitting on the log, looking at John with serenity. "I understand your revolt," he said, "but think with me. How many years have you been living like this? How many years has your life not changed? Is this cow saving you, or is it trapping you?" "It's saving me," shouted John with clenched fists. "Every day she gives me milk. Every day she guarantees that my children won't go to sleep hungry. How can you say she's trapping me? Because as long as you have her, you'll never look for another solution," the man answered calmly. "You'll never really try to plant, never seek another job, never risk something new. You're comfortable in your misery because you have that cow as your safety net. And your children, they're learning the same conformity. You're all trapped in an illusion of security that, in reality, is just a prison without bars." John felt anger boil inside him. "You don't understand anything. Get off my property." The rich man stood up calmly, dusted off his pants, and looked once more at John with those penetrating eyes. "I'll leave," he said. "But first, I want you to reflect on something. What do you have to lose? You're already living at rock bottom. The only difference is that you've gotten used to the darkness and now you're afraid of the light." And with those words, the rich man walked away, leaving John alone with his confused thoughts and his anger. John went into the house, slamming the door, still trembling with indignation. That night he could barely sleep. The stranger's words echoed in his mind. "Push your cow off the cliff. You're trapped in an illusion of security." In the following days, John tried to forget that absurd conversation. He returned to his normal routine, milking the cow, selling the cheese, doing his small jobs. But something had changed inside him. He began to observe his life with different eyes. He realized that really, nothing had changed in 20 years. He realized that his children were getting older, more hopeless, more resigned. He realized that Maria no longer smiled. He realized that he himself had given up dreaming a long time ago. One night, during dinner, Peter said something that pierced John's heart like a spear. "Dad," said the young man with a tired voice, "I think I'm going to have to accept that job at Mr. Antonio's farm. He offered a permanent position, with housing and food included. It's not what I wanted for my life, but at least it's something certain. John looked at his son and saw in his eyes the same resignation that he himself carried. Peter was giving up on his dreams. He was conforming to a life of misery, just as his father had done. And suddenly, like lightning cutting through a dark cloud, John understood what that rich man had tried to tell him. The little cow wasn't saving his family. It was condemning them to a generational prison. As long as they had that false security, they would never have the courage to seek something more. That night, John couldn't sleep a wink. He lay in bed, looking at the dark ceiling, feeling the weight of years of conformity crushing his chest. At 3 in the morning, he got up silently so as not to wake Maria, put on his old clothes and left the house. The full moon lit the way as he walked to the corral. The little cow was lying down, ruminating peacefully. When she saw John, she made that low, familiar sound like a greeting. John felt tears running down his face as he opened the corral gate. He stroked the cow's head, feeling the rough texture of her fur, and whispered, "Forgive me, but I need to choose my family. I need to choose the future." With trembling hands, he took the rope he used to guide the cow and began to walk toward the back of his property, where there was a deep cliff. The little cow followed him docilely, trusting on without imagining what was about to happen. Each step John took seemed to weigh a ton. His heart beat so hard he could hear it in his ears. His mind screamed, "What are you doing? You're crazy. You're going to starve your family to death." But something stronger than fear pushed him forward. It was desperation mixed with hope. It was the awareness that if he didn't do something drastic at that moment, nothing would ever change. His children would grow up and have children who would also be poor and resigned. The cycle would continue forever. When they reached the edge of the cliff, John stopped. Down there, far down there, he could see the sharp rocks and the small stream that ran between them. The height was frightening. The little cow stopped beside him, chewing calmly, looking at the stars in the sky. John closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and with a quick movement, released the rope and pushed the cow with all his strength. The animal mooed in fright as it fell, a sound that echoed through the mountain and pierced John's soul. He couldn't look. He turned and ran back home, with wobbly legs and a churning stomach. When he entered the house, Maria was awake, sitting at the table, fumed with a lit candle. "Where were you?" she asked, with concern in her eyes. John collapsed into a chair and began to cry like he hadn't cried since he was a child. Between sobs, he told everything. The conversation with the rich man, what he had just done, the horrible fear he was feeling. Maria turned pale. Her eyes widened with terror. "John, what have you done?" she whispered with a trembling voice. "What are we going to eat tomorrow? What are we going to sell? How are we going to survive?" "I don't know," John answered, with a broken voice. "I only know that I needed to do this. I needed to free us from this prison. Now we have no choice. We need to find another way or we'll die trying." That night, neither John nor Maria slept. They sat at the table, in silence, feeling the weight of what had been done. When the sun began to rise, Peter and Anna woke up and soon realized that something was wrong. When they learned what their father had done, they were shocked. Peter was furious, shouted at his father, said he had condemned the family. Anna cried copiously, hugging her mother. The first days after the death of the little cow were the worst of John's life. There was no milk for breakfast. There was no cheese to sell. There was nothing. The family ate the last food reserves they had, a little flour, some eggs that the skinny chickens still laid, some withered potatoes. Peter went out desperately looking for work, any work. Anna went to the priest's house to beg for food. Maria searched the house looking for something, anything of value they could sell. John, in turn, did something he had never done before. He took an old hoe and went to the flattest part of his small property. He began to dig. He dug for hours, turning the hard, stone-filled earth, sweating under the strong sun, with his hands bleeding from blisters. It wasn't planting season. He didn't have decent seeds. He didn't really know what he was doing. But he needed to do something. He needed to try. That afternoon, while John was digging desperately, Peter came home with news. He had found work at a sawmill in the neighboring town. The pay was little, but it was better than nothing. The next day, Anna also found something. The wife of the rich farmer in the region needed a helper to take care of her clothes and house, and Anna could work there in exchange for food and a small salary. Maria, seeing that everyone was fighting, also left the house. She went to the city fair and offered her services as a washerwoman. Some ladies from the city accepted, willing to pay for their clothes washed and ironed. It wasn't much, but it was something. For the first time in decades, the whole family was working, was moving, was actively fighting for a better life. They were no longer just waiting for the little cow's milk to fall from the sky. They were creating their own opportunities. The weeks went by and, miraculously, the family didn't starve to death. It was hard. It was tiring. There were days when they ate only hard bread and water, but they were alive. And more than that, they were changing. John, continuing to dig and prepare the land, began to talk to other farmers in the region, asking for advice, learning techniques he had never tried before. One neighbor gave him some corn seeds. Another taught him about crop rotation. Yet another showed him how to make compost to improve the quality of the poor soil. Peter, working at the sawmill, impressed the owner with his dedication and strength. In a few weeks, he received a raise and the promise that, if he continued like that, he could become a supervisor. He began to save every penny he earned, dreaming again about the possibility of studying. Anna, at the farmer's wife's house, proved to be so meticulous and intelligent that her boss began to teach her to read and write better, and even to do math. The lady realized the girl's potential and began to think of ways to help her develop more. Maria, washing clothes, discovered that she had a talent for removing difficult stains and for ironing clothes to perfection. Soon she had more clients than she could handle. She began to save money for the first time in her life. 3 months after the death of the little cow, something unbelievable happened. John was working on his plantation, which now covered a much larger area than he had ever imagined possible, when he heard a strange noise coming from the back of his property. Curious and a little scared, he walked there to the edge of the cliff where he had pushed the cow, and what he saw made his legs weaken. Down there in the valley, there was a green and lush pasture that he had never noticed before because he had never looked down from that cliff. And in that pasture, grazing peacefully, were about 20 fat and healthy cows, cows that belonged to no one, that lived wild in that inaccessible valley. John fell to his knees, laughing and crying at the same time. He understood everything at that moment. His little cow hadn't died to kill him. She had died to show him that there was abundance right there, so close, but he had never bothered to look because he was comfortable with his known misery. He ran back home and told Maria. Together, they devised a plan. John and some neighbors would build a safe trail to that valley. With ropes and a lot of courage, they would go down there and bring those cows up. It wouldn't be easy, but it was possible. And that's exactly what they did. It took weeks of hard work, but eventually they managed to create a path to the valley and bring the cows up. Suddenly, John no longer had a skinny little cow. He had an entire herd. He had more milk than his family could consume. He had more cheese than he could sell alone. He needed to hire helpers. He needed to expand his production. He needed to learn about administration, about business, about sales. Things he never imagined he would be able to do, but he did. And he prospered. 1 year after the death of the little cow, John's life was unrecognizable. His house had been renovated, with a new roof, plastered walls, ceramic floor. Peter had managed to start a technical course in the city and was studying to be an engineer. Anna had been accepted at a school in the capital with a scholarship and was on her way to realizing her dream of being a teacher. Maria had her own laundry business in the city with 3 employees working for her. And John had become a respected small milk producer in the region. But more than that, he had become a free man, free from fear, free from conformity, free from the mental prison he himself had built around his life. One day, John was sitting on the porch of his new house, drinking fresh coffee and watching his herd graze, when he saw a familiar man walking down the road. It was the rich man who had visited the village a year before. John immediately stood up and ran to meet him. "Sir," John called, with a huge smile on his face. "Sir, you saved my life." The rich man stopped and looked at John, confused for a moment, until he recognized that face. A slow smile formed on his lips. "Did you push the cow?" he asked, already knowing the answer. "I pushed," John answered, with tears in his eyes. "And it was the best and worst thing I ever did in my life. It was the most frightening and the most liberating. You were right. That cow was keeping me trapped. I was so busy protecting my small security that I couldn't see the opportunities that were around me." The rich man put his hand on John's shoulder and said, The little cow on the cliff isn't just about you, John. It's about all of us. We all have our little cows, that thing we think is saving us, but that in reality is preventing us from growing, from taking risks, from seeking something greater. It could be a job we hate, but that gives us security. It could be a toxic relationship that's too familiar to abandon. It could be a limiting belief about ourselves that we've carried for so long we don't even question it anymore. Each person has their little cow, and each person, at some point, needs to have the courage to push it off the cliff. John nodded, understanding perfectly. "Why do you do this?" he asked. "Why do you travel through the countryside helping people like me?" "Because I also had my little cow," answered the rich man, with a distant look. "And someone, a long time ago, had the courage to tell me I needed to push it. That changed my life, and now I try to do the same for other people." Not everyone has the courage to do what you did, John. Most prefer to cling to their known misery rather than risk in search of something better. But those who have that courage they discover that there's a whole world of possibilities waiting for them on the other side of fear. The two men talked for hours on that porch. John told all the details of his journey, the terror of that night, the days of hunger, the gradual transformation of his family, the discovery of the valley with the cows, the prosperity that came after. And the rich man listened to everything attentively, satisfied to see that his message had truly transformed a life. When the rich man finally said goodbye and continued his journey, John returned to his porch and sat there, thinking about everything that had happened. He looked at his son Peter arriving from school, excited, talking about what he had learned that day. He looked at Anna, who was at the window reading a new book that the teacher had given her. He looked at Maria, who entered the house humming a song, happy and rested for the first time in years, and John understood something profound. The little cow needed to die so they could truly live. While she was there, they were just surviving, just existing, trapped in an endless cycle of mediocrity. The death of the little cow wasn't a tragedy. It was a birth. It was the birth of a new family, of new possibilities, of a new future. You who are listening to me now, stop for a moment and reflect. What is your little cow? What is that thing you're clinging to with such force, with so much fear of losing, but that in reality is preventing you from growing? Maybe it's a job that no longer fulfills you, but you don't quit because you're afraid of not finding another. Maybe it's a friendship or toxic relationship that you maintain because it's better than being alone. Maybe it's a belief about yourself, a voice in your head saying you're not capable, not smart enough, not strong enough, don't deserve anything better. We all have our little cows. We all have that thing we think is saving us, but that in reality is slowly drowning us. And the hardest truth to accept is this: no one can push your little cow for you. Only you can do that. Only you can have the courage to let go of what is familiar, what is comfortable, what is safe, and take a leap into the unknown. Yes, it will be scary. Yes, there will be difficult days. Yes, you'll question your decision 1,000 times. But on the other side of fear, on the other side of your little cow falling off the cliff, is the life you really deserve to live. It's the version of you that doesn't conform, that doesn't limit itself, that doesn't accept crumbs when it can have the whole feast. John's story teaches us that sometimes the greatest transformation of our life begins with the most frightening decision. It begins when we stop clinging to the little we have for fear of losing everything, and we begin to risk in search of the much we could have. It begins when we understand that security is not the same as freedom, and that sometimes we need to give up the first to conquer the second. How many people spend their whole life clinging to their little cows? How many people reach the end of their lives looking back and realizing they could have been achieved so much more, but were too afraid to let go of that false sense of security? How many people bury their dreams, their talents, their potential, because they're too busy protecting a skinny little cow that barely produces enough milk to survive? The truth is that life doesn't reward conformity. Life doesn't reward those who settle. Life rewards those who have the courage to risk, to try, to fail and try again. And sometimes, having that courage means doing something radical, something that seems completely insane to everyone around. It means looking at what you always thought was your salvation and having the courage to say, "Wait, no, this is no longer enough for me. I deserve more. I'm going to seek more." John could have lived and died as a poor man, milking his skinny little cow every day, seeing his children repeat the same cycle of poverty and conformity, and he would have died believing he did the best he could, that he protected his family, that he was responsible. But deep down, it would have just been fear disguised as prudence. It would have been conformity disguised as gratitude. It took someone from outside, someone who saw the situation clearly, to show John the truth he couldn't see alone. He wasn't protecting his family. He was condemning it. He wasn't being wise. He was being cowardly. And the worst kind of cowardice is the one that disguises itself as virtue. So today, at this exact moment, I invite you to make a deep and honest reflection with yourself. Look at your life with new eyes. Question what you've always accepted as truth. Ask yourself, where am I just surviving when I could be truly living? Where have I settled for enough when I could have abundance? Where am I letting fear make my decisions, disguised as prudence or responsibility? And when you identify your little cow, when you look at it and recognize that it's trapping you instead of freeing you, then comes the hardest part. You need to have the courage to push it, no matter how much it hurts, no matter how much it scares you, no matter what others will say. Because the truth is that you won't die without your little cow. You will finally begin to live. And maybe, just like John, you'll discover that there was a valley full of opportunities right there. So close. But you never looked because you were too busy protecting your small and skinny little cow. Maybe you'll discover talents you didn't know you had. Maybe you'll discover you're stronger, more capable, more resilient than you ever imagined. Maybe you'll discover that what you thought was the end, in reality, was just the beginning. The little cow on the cliff is a powerful metaphor for all of us. It reminds us that real growth requires real risk, that true transformation requires that we leave behind what is comfortable, that real freedom has a price, and that price is the courage to let go of what traps us, even when we have no guarantee of what comes next. John pushed his little cow without knowing there were other cows in the valley. He pushed because he decided that anything would be better than continuing trapped in that life of misery. He pushed because he chose to believe there was something more, even without proof, even without guarantees. And it was that faith, that blind courage, that opened the doors to the complete transformation of his life and his family's life. So I ask you, what is the cliff you need to visit today? What is the little cow you need to have the courage to push? And more importantly, how much longer will you wait before doing what your heart already knows needs to be done? John's life shows us that it's never too late. He spent decades trapped, decades resigned, decades believing that was his only option. But it took only a moment of courage, a radical decision to change everything, to transform not only his life, but the life of his entire family and even future generations. His children won't grow up resigned like he grew up. His grandchildren won't know the poverty he knew, all because he had courage at a crucial moment to do what seemed impossible, what seemed insane, what seemed wrong to everyone around. He had the courage to push his little cow off the cliff. And you, will you have that same courage? Or will you reach the end of your life still clinging to your skinny little cow, still conforming to crumbs, still believing that small security is worth more than the immense possibility of freedom and abundance that's waiting on the other side of your fear? The choice is yours. It always was. It always will be. No one can push your little cow for you. But I can tell you with complete certainty that on the other side of that frightening decision is the version of you that you always dreamed of being. It's the life you always knew you deserved. It's the freedom you always desired, but never had the courage to seek. So take a deep breath, look at your little cow, recognize that it needs to fall, and when you're ready, when you gather all the courage you have inside you, push hard, push without looking back. And then wait, because I guarantee you, on the other side of that cliff, there's an entire life waiting for you. A real life, a life of freedom, a life that's worth every second of fear you'll feel along the way. Now tell me, have you ever gone through something like this in your life? Have you ever had to let go of something you thought was essential to discover that there was something much better waiting for you? Share here in the comments your story of when you pushed your little cow off the cliff. I really want to read each of your experiences. And if you haven't had the courage to do this yet, also share here. What is your little cow? What is trapping you? Sometimes the simple act of admitting it out loud is already the first step toward transformation. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell and share this video with someone you think needs to hear this message. Sometimes we are the messenger that someone needs to have the courage to finally push their little cow and start truly living. A huge hug to your heart, and see you in the next video.